Bill Rudge is our next speaker. For those of you that have not met Bill, Bill is the Natural Resources Supervisor for Region 3 of DEC. And I know in the room today we have people that are associated with Region 4 and Region 3. So for those of you that are in Greene or Delaware County, there is a person just like Bill. His name is Pete Innes, and he will be able to provide the same level of resource and detail that Bill's going to provide. And I think one of the keys here, as Peter alluded to, is in the Catskills we have two very large municipal entities that seem like they overshadow us at times. One is the city and one is the New York State DEC. Our objective here with Bill is to help you understand a little bit more about the park and a little bit more about New York State DEC. I'll tell you that Bill, from my experience, has been one of the people that we can call on and get really effective answers to the thorny issues relating to how DEC operates and what is the park, what is the preserve, what are the rules. So it's a good contact for you. And Bill, we're really glad you could join us today.
Well, thank you, Alan. Good morning, everyone. It's great. I see a lot of people I know here, and actually, I took Katie's challenge, I guess, so to speak, and wrote some things. My goals for today, and of course, one of my goals whenever I go to a session like this is to meet somebody new, and obviously, I'm going to meet some new people today. I already have, including the supervisor from the town of Neversink. So I thank you for this opportunity. I'm here. I'd like to keep my talk actually somewhat informal, but I have a couple of goals that tie in with and build upon the goals that Alan and Peter have articulated for today, which is to give you a better understanding of what the Catskill Park is, what the public land that the state of New York owns within the park is. And boy, I love Alan Rosa's term, because I really hope if you gain nothing else from my program here today, you'll gain a better understanding of this untapped recreational opportunity that you have. It's really an outstanding resource, and I really feel like it's underutilized right now. And I think collaboratively, collectively, there's a real opportunity for us to improve upon that, and there's going to be a lot of great benefits from that, not the least of which is to improve local economies, which I think everyone here has a sensitivity towards. So with that, I'm going to launch into my program. Maybe I'm doing this wrong, Katie?
No, it's the computer.
Ah, thank you.
So let's see. Click.
Oh, great.
Click over here.
Thank you. All right. Peter alluded to this, but I just want to lay out the framework for the Catskill Park. The Catskill Park was originally created in law, and later it was incorporated into the state's constitution. And the key phrase in Article 14 of the state's constitution is, the lands of the state now owned or hereafter acquired constituting the forest preserve as now fixed by law shall be forever kept as wild forest lands. They shall not be leased, sold, or exchanged, or be taken by any corporation, public or private, nor shall the timber thereon be sold, removed, or destroyed. And I guess to dispel one of the myths that Alan's challenged me to try to do today, oftentimes I get into some really good conversations with people that live in the region about, why can't we make use of that timber resource in the Catskill Forest Preserve? Boy, you could probably sell the state's debt with that. And I just want to make it clear to everyone that it's not a decision that a state employee or even an agency like DEC can make on their own. It's the people of the state of New York decided back in 1885 that they didn't want that timber cut. And so unless you want to change the state constitution, that we work with that. And I think it provides a lot of great opportunities that the state had enough foresight to protect such a broad area of the region. And that's what we're going to get into later on in the program here. But that's the foundation. That's the foundation that we work from. How large is the park? It's over 1,000 square miles. It incorporates 705,500 acres, and it encompasses 4 counties: Greene, Delaware, Sullivan, and Ulster, and there are 24 towns within the blue line of the park. I get this question a lot, what is the Catskill Park? And I think you all have a sense for it, but I want to highlight probably the unique part. New York has 2 parks that are unique really in the country, the Adirondack Park and the Catskill Park. And what makes them unique more than anything else is that rather than a solid block of protected land where you drive through a gate or an entrance and you're in the park and everything you look at is public land, both the Adirondack and Catskill parks were created where the state identified a core area where they wanted to protect land, but they also wanted to preserve communities within that park. And that's what makes these parks unique, and it creates some really interesting and terrific opportunities, and I think you're going to hear that more from our keynote speaker today. How much of the park is publicly owned? Well, the largest part of the park, now it's a little over 50%, is owned by 2 entities. The largest entity is the state of New York. We own just about 300,000 acres of land within the Catskills, most of it within the park, and most of it managed as Forest Preserve. The New York City watershed owns another significant portion of the park. I think right now they own 11% of the land within the park. Paul Rush can help refine that later. And then we have some various municipalities have public lands, you know, public parks, town parks, county parks, and there's also some not-for-profit organizations that have protected land, including the Catskill Center, so another 1%. So the majority of the land, just over half, is publicly owned, but then there's a significant portion of private ownership within the park. How does that break down by county? The vast majority of the Forest Preserve lands are in 2 counties in the park, Ulster and Greene. That's the core of the park. As you'll see from my chart here, Ulster County has a little over 150,000 acres, and Greene County is 90,000. Delaware has a little over 40,000, and Sullivan County has about 19,000 acres of forest preserve land. This map illustrates how that land ownership pattern plays out across the region, and you'll get a great map later on today from the Catskill Center that you'll be able to see that a little better. To give you a sense, we don't treat all the forest preserve land the same. Several years ago, we developed a master plan for the Catskill Park Forest Preserve lands, and that master plan divided or just classified the lands into these 5 categories: wilderness, wild forest, intensive use, primitive corridors, and administrative. The wilderness and wild forest categories by far, make up the vast majority of the park land. Wilderness lands are the most managed the most restrictive. They're managed for solitude and for a sense of I guess they put the greatest responsibility on the user to be self-sufficient. We don't allow motorized recreation in wilderness areas in any way. So it's really they're managed for that for the feeling of solitude and a reliance on your own self-responsibility. We have a great system of foot trails throughout the wilderness areas in the park. We have 14 wild forest units that make up 130,000 acres of land within the park, and there we have less restrictions, so we can develop snowmobile trails and other more active recreational opportunities. Our intensive use areas include the unit we're in now, the Bel Air Ski Center, and 7 campgrounds within the park. where we have very highly developed recreational opportunities. The primitive corridors were created as a way to allow for mountain biking to exist in the park and to use some of the otherwise wilderness areas, and you'll see that on the map when you look at the Catskill Center's map later on today. Then we have some really almost insignificant, but some small areas that are used for administrative purposes at the park. We have a great number of recreational opportunities, and this is where I want to start to get into, the fact that we have these terrific recreational opportunities in the park that probably are underutilized right now. 7 campgrounds with 738 campsites. Those are the campgrounds where you pay a fee to use, such as Woodland Valley or Wilson, Little Pond over in Delaware County, or Mongat Pond in Sullivan County. We have, just to make sure everyone's clear on this, we allow camping on almost all our land. So really an almost unlimited opportunity for primitive camping. If you want to put on a backpack and carry your sleeping bag and your stove and that kind of stuff with you, you can camp anywhere within the park as long as you're 150 feet from road, trail, and water and below 3,500 feet in elevation. We have 33 lean-tos in the park scattered throughout that provide a little more shelter for those that don't want to carry their tent. We have a couple of day use areas in the park, including locally the Pine Hill Lake day use area. We have 80 miles of snowmobile trails, and they're focused in I'd say 2 major networks, one in Delaware County and one in Sullivan County, and another 34 miles of horse trails in the park. We have, again, probably the largest network of trails that we have in the park is hiking trails, and the park is laced with hiking trails. It's a great opportunity for all kinds of users. If anything, I would say, and we'll get to this later in terms of the partnerships, but we probably have a very extensive system of what I would call advanced level hiking trails that are probably for the user that really likes an ambitious hiking opportunity. Most of our trail systems are centered around the summits of mountains, but we have to a lesser extent, we have trails that are more family oriented, and I think that there's opportunities in the future to develop more opportunities for the beginner level hiker. We have 5 fire towers throughout the Catskills. They've recently been rehabilitated. That's a great partnership opportunity I'll mention later, but they're some of the more heavily used hiking trails in the park are because they have such a great destination. And as many of you know, in the Catskills, most of our peaks don't afford a great scenic view on their own. None of our peaks are above the tree line. So these fire towers allow you to get above the tree line to get that panoramic view. We have a lot of fishing opportunities in the park, and of course, a tremendous amount of fishing opportunity exists on the public land within the park. But on the private lands within the park, we've acquired over 60 miles of fishing rights. So we have this great network that complements the public land resource, and that's what we call PFR, public fishing rights on private lands within the park. We have, again, we have a lesser, if you want to compare us to the Adirondacks, it's one of the differences. We don't have as much of a water resource, but we do have a lot of lakes and ponds in the park and streams in the park that provide a great opportunity. This is Alder Lake in western Ulster County. We have, of course, the Bel Air Mountain Ski Center, which attracts thousands of visitors a year. In fact, that's it's probably the single most highly used public land resource we have in the park. I'm going to dispel another, I guess, misconception about the public land resource in the Catskill Park, I hope today, and that's that, to answer this question, does New York State pay property taxes on the public lands within the park? And I can say affirmatively, we do. We have since the creation of the Forest Preserve back in the late 1800s. That was one of the, in fact, truth be known, that's why we have a Catskill Park today, is because the state early on recognized the need to local municipalities, if they were going to bear this burden of public land within their communities, that the state would pay local property taxes. I just recently got the latest information from the Office of Real Property Tax Services, and I provided a little breakdown by county here. We're going to have a chance, a question and answer period later, and plus hopefully a more formal opportunity to interact with any of you later on today, but I can give you a breakdown for your town, for instance, if you want to know how much the state of New York pays in property taxes in the town of Neversink or the town of Shandaken, I can give you that number. Here you can see it's a significant amount in total. The state of New York paid in 2010 nearly $12 million in property taxes. How do we manage the parkland? I alluded to the fact that we have a master plan earlier. The master plan not only classifies land into those categories of wilderness, wild forest, and intensive use, but it also provides all the guidelines to which we have to work within when we manage those lands. And that's a document that was developed with a lot of public input. We had public hearings throughout the park when we last revised the plan in 2008. And so if you don't have a copy of that plan, I have one or two copies with me today, but let me know and I can put a copy in the mail to you. It's also available on the department's website. You can go directly to the department's website and either download it or at least view it, and that might be an easier way for a lot of you to use it now. We also have environmental conservation law and rules and regulations that are all available on the department's website. This is where I'd actually like to build upon, it's one of my goals, I guess a better way to put it, for today, is to illustrate some of the partnerships we've undertaken that I think have really contributed to our management of the park and represent an opportunity going into the future in terms of how we can improve our management and, again, realize more of this untapped recreational opportunities we have. Because Alan alluded to it earlier, you know, these are difficult times financially for all of us, including DEC and other state agencies. And the best way to accomplish things in these times is through partnerships. And those are the most effective, and to be honest, those are the more, when resources are scarce, the partnerships are the more compelling opportunities for the state to fund new initiatives. And so I really think they represent a great opportunity looking forward. Some of the opportunities we have, and I have some examples of them, we have a few years ago the state legislature created an Adopt a Natural Resource program, and that allows volunteer organizations and not-for-profits to enter into a more formal agreement with the state of New York to undertake stewardship responsibilities for public lands. And a good example would be we have an Adopt a Natural Resource agreement with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference for trail maintenance. And the beauty of the agreement is, number one, it sets out the common agreement with both parties as to what each party will do to accomplish that goal of maintaining the trail system. But it also provides liability protection to the volunteers and workers' compensation protection. So if they're out maintaining a trail on the forest preserve and they get hurt, we will cover their medical expenses, which is a nice benefit for them. And it's been a very successful program. It's allowed us to maintain a lot of our resources where we don't have the resources ourselves to do that. With municipalities, we can enter into memorandums of understanding, and one of the most effective memorandum of understandings we've entered into recently, and many of you may be familiar with it, is the agreement we have with the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, where we help them in the stewardship of the city-owned lands in the park and in the entire Catskill watershed. That agreement is the reason why they were more comfortable allowing a broader arrangement, a broader array of public access to their lands. And so you may be familiar with this, and I'm sure Paul will talk about it. A lot of their lands now are open to the public without the need of getting a special permit from DEP, and that's because of this agreement with our two agencies, and you know, the interest that you as town representatives of your town expressed to DEP. It's a great success story. We also have cooperative agreements with municipalities especially for one-time situations. We have a temporary revocable permit program where we can grant someone a permission to use state land for a particular reason that I'll get into with a few examples later on. And we also have a lot of volunteer opportunities. Peter mentioned the Catskill Interpretive Center site. That's another an adopted natural resource agreement we have with the Friends of the Catskill Interpretive Center to construct the kiosk on lands that our department leases for the Catskill Interpretive Center. It was a terrific success, and I think we're looking forward to future improvements on that property to make it even more useful and effective in orienting people to the Catskill Park. This is an example of the New York City watershed lands where we have an agreement with them, and the public has access to a lot of their upland lands. You know, literally, I think the agreement covers nearly 100,000 acres now. Peter mentioned the sign program. That's another I included here. I won't talk much about it other than that's an example of a partnership between DEC, DOT, and local municipalities where we involve representatives of communities throughout the park in designing that logo, and now we're implementing it. It's going up in Ulster County, and we hope to see it spread into the other three counties in the region that have lands within the park to help people to gain a better sense of the Catskill Park. This illustrates what the town of Shandaken has embraced the idea, and they're using that logo with their street signs to again heighten the sense of park when you're in the town of Shandaken. The department has some grant opportunities for communities both inside and outside the park. A couple that I wanted to mention in particular here, and I'm glad to answer questions later on. We have an urban forestry grant program, and that program helps communities manage their urban trees, and I think that has more relevance today than it has in the past with issues like emerald ash borer. We have programs that can help communities inventory their urban tree resource and start to get ahead of the curve in terms of dealing with emerald ash borer and other forest pests that will no doubt arrive at our doorstep in the future. Volunteer fire assistance grants. I think this is a great opportunity. I think most volunteer fire companies in the Catskills are aware of this, but if you aren't, you should look into it. It's a great program. We provide funding for volunteer fire companies throughout the New York State, and the Catskills, I think, are well suited to the program. We can provide money for you know, equipment that volunteer companies need, especially in rural areas. We also have a Smart Growth Grants program. It's a new program in the Catskills, and some of the communities along the Route 28 corridor have received Smart Growth Grant money and are in the process of using that money to develop kiosks and other information, public land resource, educational items to help people learn more about their communities. I'll wind up. I hope I've kept within time. Alan mentioned I represent the Southern Catskills in my role in Region 3, so the towns of, or the counties of Ulster and Sullivan in the Catskill Park. I have a counterpart, Peter Enos, who would represent the counties in the northern part of the Catskills, including Greene and Delaware. and here's our contact information. Either Peter or I are happy to serve as contact people for you if you have any kind of questions that our department or issues that you think DEC can play a role in. Feel free to contact us, and if we can't help you directly, we're happy to try to orient you to the department and hook you up with the right person. I haven't spoken a lot about the other roles our department plays in the park besides as a steward of public land. But as you know, we have a regulatory role and an outreach role on a lot of other fronts. And I just briefly want to mention, we provide forest management advice for landowners throughout the park. Please feel free to contact the department if you have that need. If you have landowners that need help with managing their forest lands. And we also, right now, we're in the midst of trying to help communities as well as individual landowners deal with the aftermaths of the tropical storms Irene and Lee. As you know, we have part of our role is to protect the streams throughout and other water courses throughout the region. We have a permitting process. We've issued a general permit to allow communities to get into and deal with the impacts of Irene and Lee. And our staff will go out and meet with landowners to help them figure out what's the best way to deal with those impacts. And I'm happy to answer questions about that when we get into that as well. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today and look forward to talking with you later.
We do have a tremendous amount of public resources in terms of land resources that are available. The way I do the math, within 10 years, it's going to be 500,000 acres of land and water that are open to public access. And I think Bill hit it on the head. We haven't done the greatest job of promoting that. And they're a little underutilized, so that does affect our economy in a big way. And I think one of the most interesting things, thinking as an elected official, the example that Bill used where he worked with a municipality to work on a specific kiosk to try to get better access, better promotion. Those are the things that I think are low-hanging fruit. And as we deal with budget challenges, forming those kind of partnerships and helping the department make better use of that resource, I think is one of the keys to the way we're going to move forward. So, Bill, great presentation. Thank you. Paul Rush is the Deputy Commissioner for New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, a.k.a. the city. Paul is a really great asset for us in the watershed because not only does he supervise all of the upstate watershed programs and initiatives, and it's a lengthy list of things that he does, and the partnerships that New York City brings us and some of the funding resources have been of incredible value to us as we've dealt with things like the most recent flood. The other advantage that we have with Paul in his position is Paul is also a resident of the Catskills, lives near Grahamsville. So Paul, I'm going to invite you to come up and give us your presentation.
Thanks, Alan, and I'm really glad I'm able to be here and join you today, and I'm even happier that the road's been repaired, that you can actually get through the Frost Valley Road now. If anyone, that just happened, that's the big deal. It's some washout, some washout below Winnisook and before you get to Oliveria. Man, and that was an incredible storm, as everyone in the watershed knows, and the efforts of recovery continue. And when you take a ride, to a spot where you haven't been in a while, such as up the Neversink Valley and then back down the backside from Winnisook into over into the town of Shandaken into the Sopus watershed, you really, seeing different things. I hate to say you get conditioned to seeing Margaretville, seeing what happened in Prattsville, even down below into Scurry County. You see it a couple times. Okay, it was a terrible flood, but to see a spot that you hadn't seen yet, such as through the valley, up for Frost Valley on the backside, it really brings back and the impact of what a storm it was, and to see houses that have been destroyed in that section that you hadn't seen before, it really comes back. how people were personally impacted by the storm. And that's something that is a reality for everyone in this room. And we're working together to get through this and recover and think about the future, how we can protect the watersheds, but even more important, I think, for everyone in this room is protecting the lives, number one, and the property of the folks in the watershed is something important. And I think doing those things in a way, and it can be done in a way, that's also protective of water quality in the city's interest as well. So that's what, just that, I wasn't intending on saying that as I was coming over here, but just that ride just really brought home that point again. So thank you, Alan, for inviting me here today, and I apologize I can't stay for the entire program. Let me figure out how to do this. Whoops. What did I do wrong?
I got it. Oh.
There we go. So, number one, why am I here? This is what we're going to cover. Talk a little bit about DEP and how it impacts the watershed, a little bit about the agency's strategic plan, and making the most of what the city does for communities, opportunities that are out there that you might not be familiar with. Talk a bit about watershed regulations and opportunities for improvement. And I'm glad Alan Rosa is right up here in the front row keeping an eye on me and what I'm saying, Alan. Good to see you this morning. So why am I here? I mean, I think that's a pretty basic question, which I think it can answer. I guess why am I here? Because New York City gets its water out of the Catskills. But that was by no means a foregone conclusion at the turn of the century. The city began developing its water supply upstate. The first place they went was to the Croton system, Westchester County, just north of the city line. And as the city continued to grow and there was a need for additional water, the first choice to get water was not to go to the Catskills. The places the city looked first and had a higher priority. And if you look back at some of the books that we have in libraries and basements of different offices, which I'd like to, when I go to a different office, I look at the books they have, and the historic information is incredible. And I know Diane Galusha is here someplace. She certainly appreciates that. Hi, Diane. But the city was not going to go to the Catskills. The first place the city wanted to go and thought it was more economical to get additional water was to go up into the Berkshires and also into the Taconics and up into Dutchess County and perhaps Columbia County, because it would have been more economical to get water to bring it down the east side of the Hudson River, or even perhaps Lake George or through the Adirondacks. There was a lot of trepidation and about crossing the Hudson River, because it was understood that was going to be it was going to be a challenge to bring water across the Hudson River. But what had happened is the city was moving forward to develop the system. The next spot, there was plans, and I still have them in the office in Grahamsville, of a number of reservoirs that would have been built in Dutchess County. So we were going to Dutchess County, and Dutchess County passed the Dutchess County Act of 1904. And that prohibited the city from developing water resources in Dutchess County. So that really put the lock on going to the high quality water that exists in the Catskills. And it really is high quality water. And when I was over in Dutchess County a couple weeks ago, I was kind of called on the carpet by the county executive there about our project to build a bypass tunnel around a leak that we have in the Delaware Aqueduct. The county executive said, we haven't heard anything from DEP in so long. You should have been here earlier and talking to us. And I reminded him, you guys kind of kicked us out back in 1904, so it's nice to have a dialogue, but that you did kick us out. Fortunately or unfortunately, the situation now, we did develop a supply in the Catskills, and one of the reasons the city came here was that the water here is just such a high quality. The first place we went to was on the east side, Shokan and Square Reservoir, and the quality, one of the big points of quality the city was looking for at that time was a soft water, a very soft water. And the water that comes out of the Catskills is very soft. And back then, you had steamships that were pulling into New York City, and the water that was available from the system with very, very low calcium was able to be used on boilers with very little treatment. So that was one of the driving factors in going into the Catskills as well. And the turbidity problems, you look at the streams today, especially on the Esopus side and the east side, I mean, there's turbidity issues. And that was recognized back then as well. The tech, you go back in engineering reports, they recognize that turbidity would be an issue. Shokan was built into 2 basins because of that, the Shokan Reservoir. And there's also mentioned specifically on the need for perhaps targeted stream work to deal with the turbidity problems. So the reason I'm here is because the city decided to build the supply in the Catskills, and it certainly impacted the communities in the Catskills, and that's why you're here. So the city supply itself today, it's 580 billion gallons of capacity. That's the gross capacity. You'll see some different numbers some places, but that's the total water that is in each of the 19 reservoirs we have in 3 controlled lakes. 6 of the most important reservoirs are in the Catskills. That's where the city's getting all of its supply today. And the city has gotten all its supply essentially for the past 10 years or more from the Catskill system. We've used the Croton very little. We used it once about 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago we used it when we had a shutdown of the Delaware Aqueduct to do some work, and then we used the Croton supply again back during the drought of 2001. But our highest quality water comes from the Catskills, and 9 million people rely on the system, and we deliver about 1.1 billion gallons a day. And that's down from a peak use in 1979 where it was about 1.6 billion gallons a day. And that's despite about a 15% increase in the population in the city and additional outside consumers. So we've really driven down how much water the city uses despite increasing population. The watershed itself is roughly 2,000 square miles, including both the Catskill and the Delaware, or the Catskill, Delaware, and Croton portions. Best quality water comes out of the Catskills. The Catskill watershed is about 1 million acres. It's, you know, rural, mountainous, and it's about 78% forested. You know, a significant portion of the tree. I mean, you see it right here. You see it as you drive around. It's mostly forest, and it's such high quality that we have a filtration avoidance determination. And our biggest challenge is turbidity, and right now turbidity in the Shokan Reservoir is high. We've cut down how much water we take out of a Shokan. Today we're taking about 300 million gallons a day out of a Shokan, just about 800 million gallons a day out of Rondout Reservoir. And how cloudy the water is, the turbidity, it's measured in units called NTUs, nephelometric turbidity units. And our requirement is that the water we deliver from our last reservoir before we disinfect it has to be less than 5 NTU. And the water right now leaving a Shokan is about 30 NTU, so it's high. And we're actually treating that water at Catskill Reservoir with aluminum sulfate to cause it to settle. But the water that's coming out of Rondout is 1.2 NTU. So it's high quality water coming out of Rondout. And the reservoir normally with the best quality water is Neversink, followed by Papacton, and this is on the Delaware side, followed by Papacton, then Cannonsville. But after this storm that we've just had, and what's happened in the particular upstream Neversink turbidity right now is about 6, and the folks who've been down by in the town of Neversink or Grainsville noticed how turbid Neversink was, and it remains about 6 NTU right now. Papacton is around the same, 6 NTU. But the best quality water we have right now is coming out of, in the Delaware system, is coming out of Cannonsville. And we've been relying on a large degree on Cannonsville water since the storm. And we've also been, what we're able to do at our reservoirs, we're able to select the elevation with the best quality. And immediately after the storm at Cannonsville, the best quality water was on the surface. So we changed elevation, essentially drew the surface of Cannonsville Reservoir, and there's more turbid water at a lower elevation. And by making use of these 19 different reservoirs we have to find the best water, I mean, we've been able to continue to deliver water that meets the standard despite the challenges that we have. There's a whole nother discussion on a Shokan reservoir we can go in for turbidity in the Catskills another day, but that could be an all-day seminar. So DEP, what is DEP in the watershed? And I just want to talk a little bit about how DEP impacts the watershed. And the most impacts that folks in the watershed feel, we have a regulatory arm and we have regulatory requirements, and they're different somewhat than exists in other parts of the state, and we have staff that go out and enforce the regulations, and certainly that's by nature something that would cause friction. The city of New York, the largest city in the state with about half its population, got through the Water Supply Act of 1905, extraterritorial jurisdiction. It's a municipal entity down in the city, but we actually have authority over areas that are not part of the city. So it's by nature, I think, something that causes friction. I mean, that's open and honest. But there are other things that the city does by operating the water supply that does provide some benefits to the economy, which I think are significant. The city is a major business enterprise in the watershed. And in the Catskills, in the west of Hudson region, we have about 450 employees and about 860 in the watershed in general in total. This is from the Bureau of Water Supply itself, 860. When you include our police and our construction, it becomes closer to 1,000 employees upstate. The payroll is about a $40 million payroll in the watershed, in this portion of the watershed, when we include Kingston. And we purchased about $11.4 million in goods and services from vendors in watershed counties. And overall, with our presence, with the construction work we do, it's roughly $331 million annually, and we've done a study that we hope to release soon that creates about 3,500 jobs in the watershed. So the presence that we have, there is a positive impact in terms of providing employment and providing benefits and opportunities in the watershed. So the Bureau of Water Supply has 23 different spots where people working for the Bureau report to. And what this map shows in the Catskills, where there are locations where DEP has staff. And Kingston in the far east side is one spot was a major hub of activity. We have staff also reporting to Shokan, down to Grahamsville is a major location, Downsville, the Pacton Reservoir, and also at the wastewater treatment plants we operate, Tannersville, Grand Gorge, Margaretville, Pine Hill, and around Schoharie at Gilboa, the Schoharie Intake Chamber, and in Grand Gorge. So we're spread out in the watershed, and we employ people in there. So part of your constituents, and certainly some of them are direct employees of DEP. And over the past several years, we've tried to, we've implemented internship programs at DEP to try to get contact, and what was beneficial for the city long term is really, as the system continues to evolve, is try to hire as many staff members as we can who come from the local area. Our labor force we have, the blue collar force, is largely from the city itself. But as the city geared up to do filtration avoidance back in the 1990s, 90, 91, 92, you remember those times, Alan, there was a lot of tension at that point. But the city was doing major hiring. And nearly all the staff that worked for the Bureau of Water Supply, the engineering, the scientific staff, were all hired about that same time. And I never thought I'd have the opportunity to come back to the Catskills to work. My parents still lived down near Monticello. My father taught in Tri-Valley and down in Fallsburg as a teacher is what he did. I went away, I went to West Point, spent my time in the military, and got out, and I thought, I'd never come back to this area as much as I'd like to come back near where I grew up. But the city happened to be hiring at that time in the 90s, and I came back near where I grew up to work, and I've been with DEP nearly 20 years. 20 years, it's a long time. I don't know, it's all relative. But so did nearly all the other engineering and scientific staff. And one of the challenges we have is succession and trying to build the cadre. So after, eventually I'm going to retire, I hope, if I make it that far, if I don't get fired or something. Well, it's, which, I'll be leaving, and so will all the other staff. And it's going to happen in a very short period of time. And one of the challenges is also to get, technical staff, engineering, scientific, young graduates from colleges, universities who are local to come work for the agency. And this is a difficult time to, everyone's under constraints, headcount reductions, but I'm really committed, and we are committed, to try to find local individuals to come work for us in scientific and engineering positions, because there's going to be a major changeover within the next 10 to 15 years where there will be a lot of senior staff leaving. And what the best thing, I think, for the city and for the community is to have staff who come from the watershed. So that's one of the other things that I ask the folks in this room today. If you know of students who are thinking about going into engineering or scientific background, going into college at college now, to really encourage them to, we'll put out more information in the spring again about our internship programs, but consider applying to DEP, because there will be opportunities to advance. Last year, our then Commissioner Kaz Holloway, who's now Deputy Mayor in New York City, put out the DEP strategic plan. And there's several items that focus directly on the Bureau of Water Supply. But I just want to highlight two of those items about supporting economic development compatible with watershed protection. That's something Commissioner Holloway completely embraced, Deputy Mayor Holloway completely understood and embraced, and Commissioner Strickland also understands how important it is with our watershed, with the watershed that provides New York City with water, that it's really our watershed, and it has to be a living watershed, and there has to be a way, people have to have economic opportunities here for this partnership to work. And working with partners is the best way for watershed protection. So we are committed to that. We're looking at ways to continue to work together on that. After the flood, CWC took the action of tapping into the Catskill Fund for the Future to assist businesses who've been damaged by floodwaters. The city has committed an additional $1 million to that program, and that's part of our commitment to having a living watershed. And it's part of that. Economic opportunities, recreational opportunities, go hand in hand in terms of bringing people into the area and making a better place to live and to visit. And we are looking for ways to expand recreation on the city's land. To that end, removing barriers to access. The city has been buying a lot of land since 1997, and we continue to buy land in the watershed. And previously, you would require a permit to go on our land to do anything. And to hunt, you had a process. You had to have an access permit. You had to get a hunting tag each year. And when I became deputy commissioner, at that time Commissioner Lloyd, we had a discussion, and this was a point of friction between the city and the watershed towns. And one afternoon I was sitting on city property near Grahamsville. I was hunting, and I had forgotten my DEP tag. And I was thinking, I'm violating our regulations because I'm sitting here without a DEP tag. And I'd read something from Jim Eisel in the paper the previous week about how you could feel like a criminal on the property, and it just didn't. What is the risk of going on city land to hunt? Why is there a security risk? And that began a discussion between myself and the commissioner, and eventually we moved forward in creating public access areas, working with the communities and with DEC, where we now allow on most of our lands you can fish, hunt, hike, trap without any special permit. And as we open up new lands, we're committed to doing this to make access as easy as possible. One area where I know we still have work to do is mapping and seeing where our lands are. If you try to get on our website to find a map, it's really difficult to find the one you want unless you understand the different names. And I was challenged with that this past hunting season in finding maps. So we're going to work on that one. So, what did I do here? There we go. So there's over 68,000 acres open west of Hudson on 300 recreational units. 46,000 of them do not require permits to get on to fish, hunt, hike, or trap. Boating is something we are actually required to do under the Water Supply Act of 1905, and we continue to provide boating opportunities for fishing at all of our reservoirs. And in 2009, we started the Cannonsville Recreational Boating Pilot Program, and I just got a copy of the report. I just got a copy of the final report on this pilot program, and it appears this past year the number of visitors is down, but there's no apparent impact on water quality from this program, and we're committed. I mean, it makes sense to do it there. We're looking to expand it to other reservoirs, and we hope to have an announcement on that soon in other reservoirs in the Catskills. So this is not the announcement this is not the announcement. I'm not authorized to do that, but okay. I'm saying we expect to have an announcement soon.
Nice try though, Bill.
Yeah, right.
Other recreation related permits we have on our properties. Never sink with ball fields that were done under a land use permit. Unfortunately, the storm really ripped the ball fields apart, which were located right on Rondout Creek. We've done pheasant work with releases with DEC. Stocking at our reservoirs, certainly done with our partners from DEC. And snowmobile trails in Delaware County up through in the Roxbury area. We've been working with snowmobile clubs to have trails and maintain trails in city property, and that's another opportunity for other places to develop trails, and we will do that. There's a process in place working with clubs. And we are also working with the Finger Lakes Trail Association on developing some trails, some really long distance trails that will run through city property as well. Agricultural use, I mean, there are more than 61 projects on city lands raising crops, livestock, and also maple syrup. Notice there's one big operation near Grahamsville on some city property. I'm not quite sure who's doing that, but we do a lot of. I'm sure it's permitted. I'm sure it's permitted. But we're committed to also allowing our lands to be used for agricultural purposes and having a process that continues to provide benefits to the community when we acquire lands. We just completed working with the U.S. Forest Service on a study of our lands and best management practices that will help us better manage our lands and provide opportunities for loggers in the area to log city lands as well. And one of the biggest threats we see, invasive species, the emerald ash borer is a threat. Since 78% of our lands are forested in the watershed, any sort of change of the health of the forest could impact water quality long term. And the ash accounts for about 7%, I believe, of the watershed tree canopy or the tree population. So that's a lot of potential loss of trees that provide nutrient uptake. We're also working to develop firewood and bluestone mining as pilot projects on the lands, and doing things, and these are things that can be done in a way that's protective of water quality. And as long as we can do it in that manner, we're open to other ideas and to make best use of the city property. Our stream management program, the key to the stream management program, we have some really good technical experts in-house at DEP based in Kingston. But the real bulk of the expertise really lies out in the counties, at the soil and water agencies and at Cornell Cooperative Extension, and the relationships that we have with Greene County, Delaware County, Ulster County through Cornell Cooperative Extension for the most part, and Sullivan County really is I think one of the best programs we have in terms of promoting a connection with stewardship of the water resources in the Catskills, how that provides a benefit to the city and also to the local communities. And after the flood, we've been working very closely with these agencies to respond, to make sure that we have programs in place and do the right things for the stream that are both protective of water quality and also provide flood hazard mitigation. One of the largest challenges right now immediately is debris in the streams. And Catskill Watershed Corporation just this week announced also $2.5 million on a program to address this woody debris issue. And we will certainly continue to work together with the counties on the streams going forward. There'll be more to come on this as well in the next several weeks. So to date, we've put in about $55 million into our stream programs. Some of the other items we have. The city, we pay about $68 million in taxes west of Hudson, and you can see there the breakdown, which is the largest portion of our expense budget in the Bureau of Water Supply goes to taxes, and it's mostly for the improvements, the dams and reservoirs, the wastewater treatment facilities. As you can see, at the bottom of the page, the new lands that the city acquired, the taxes on those really constitute a small portion of our entire bill. And the water supply permit that was issued at the end of last year that allows the city to continue to buy land in the watershed also required and established a process of working together with the communities and developing matrices and to address long-standing tax issues, and there are those out there. There's a process in place to engage in discussions to come to a fair resolution. I mean, issues concerning the value of water or lands underwater is just one example of discussions that we're continue to have. Did I say that okay, Alan?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. And I mean, this is the point where when I get out to different spots, you get different pieces of data back. Is our watershed regulations, our overview of septic systems, stormwater impacts, that we have oversight authority, and we do this in a manner to, we have an obligation through our filtration avoidance determination that's been issued from State Health and EPA to demonstrate that we're protecting the watershed and to provide high quality water to New York City. So we have an obligation. This is one of the mechanisms through which we do it. So we have an obligation to have this function, and we have to do it in a manner protective of the water supply. But the area we also have to be is do it in a manner where we're responsive to the people in the watershed, which means be timely and have timely and reasonable in terms of how we apply that program. And I've heard concerns about both being timely and reasonable as I've been out in the watershed in the past couple of months. I've heard a number of those, and this is an area which I've challenged my own staff to do a better job on, in terms of our responsiveness and also making sure that how we apply these regulations is really done in a way that's protective of the water supply system, but also in a reasonable manner. And the number of programs, the regulations were updated in 1997. They went from a thin little piece of paper from 1953. All the regulations were on about 10 pieces of 3x5 paper. Now they're a book, and the regulations were updated again in 2010 to address some changes that were made in state and federal regulations, and designed to protect the water supply in terms of septic systems, stormwater runoff for the most part. So in terms of the application of our regulations, how we do things in the watershed, you know, I'm always open to hearing feedback and also trying to figure out how we can do things better. And as the elected officials representing constituents, you're the ones who get direct feedback, and you hear things, and you can provide direct answers back. But if there are issues that you think deserve, you know, higher level attention, you know, feel free to reach out to me, or I mean the staff that I have involved into. I mean Jeff Graff is really the first line person in dealing with issues in the watershed. He's based out of Kingston. And Dave Warren, who is an assistant commissioner, works for me, focuses on watershed protection efforts altogether. And then I do that, and then I do some other things as well. So these are the key contacts in terms of operating our watershed protection programs. Whoops, sorry. You want to write that down, right? Whoops. I'll get it back. I will. So this concludes what I wanted to say today, but I'm certainly open to taking any questions you may have. Yeah, a lot of questions. Should have saw. I spoke with my own staff yesterday. No one wanted to ask any questions. Yes.
I'm Michael Warren. I'm from the town of Marpletown. I just have a couple of things. One, in your presentation, you don't say the good that the DEP does to the villages and towns downstream that get that water, that also enjoy the water from the Ashokan Reservoir. Ours being, you know, town of Marpletown, the Rosendale and High Falls water supply. When we had the Superfund site, we enjoy the water from the aqueduct. Number two is, unlike the towns that are up here, we're the town on the lower end that is dealing with the Esopus problem. It's been a challenge. You know, our residents in our community are really concerned. Our town park and our water, our swimming hole has now been you know, decimated from it, and the kids are now calling it the chocolate milk stream. You know, I'd love to see the DEP, you know, Mike Hines' office also is concerned about this, is it's done a major damage to our town, and town of Hurley, you know, Ulster, of course, Saugerties. So, you know, it's nice, but, you know, on one side we get the good stuff, but we also are getting the bad stuff right now. What are we going to do?
It's good to hear you mention the good stuff. The bad stuff, there's always bad stuff, and a Ashokan Reservoir is turbid right now, and I mentioned that the more turbid water is in the West Basin. That water is being released right now downstream through the Ashokan release channel. We shut it off yesterday because of high water downstream. We turned it back on today, and if it was an easy issue to solve, we'd do it. But it's a complicated issue. If you take water out of a Ashokan Reservoir and create a void, you provide an increased ability to protect downstream from flooding. And there's been a demand. I mean, there's definitely been a demand. Senator Bonasek and others have demanded us to have voids all the time from the reservoir. And we're operating right now under a protocol that was provided to us from DEC that gives us essentially a storage curve where we're committed to getting a Ashokan Reservoir down to 90% during most of the year. And this is similar to how we operate the Delaware reservoirs under a new program that went into effect in June. So we're making releases right now to get us to 90%. And that limits how low we're going to lower the reservoir and also provide some protection for flooding, but it also, by nature, we're releasing the water that's in the reservoir from the West Basin that's very turbid, and it's with the high inflows that we have been getting, how wet a condition, it's been taking a long time to get us down, or get us to there. We're required, we take the best quality water we can find in the system, and right now the best water is coming out of Rondout, so we've also reduced how much water we take out of a show can. So the water is going to leave a show can reservoir one of three ways. It goes down the aqueduct, goes down the release channel, or it spills. Long term, in dealing with turbidity of the show can reservoir, one of our strategies is going to be, our strategy will be use Croton as much as possible, which we haven't used. We're connecting the Delaware Aqueduct to shaft 4 to the Catskill Aqueduct, which is going to reduce our need to rely on a show can reservoir. So that reduces our need, DEP's need to operate the release channel. But what would happen in a show can, since we wouldn't be taking it off, it's going to cause, in the absence of any other program, it's going to cause the show can reservoir to be operated at a much higher level than it would otherwise be. Water would spill over from east and west, and you'd have a long period of essentially turbid water spilling. So it's really a very it's a very difficult problem. And
we have a major problem with the Esopus. Not only the flooding, the turbidity, plus it's going through the prime agricultural lands. The Davenports and the Gills. I mean, this is a major economic driver in the agricultural of the county. It's going through that, and now we've gone. The future flooding is going to be a lot worse now because of what's in the stream. So, I mean, the DEP can sort of help with the DEC. Possibly, we're going to be major stream, river mediation all the way up to Saugerties because of, I mean, most of Jack Gill's soils now are up almost to Saugerties in the stream bed. So it's going to be a major problem, and I'm hoping that, working with Mike Hines' office and DEC and the DEP, this is not an easy fix, and we understand that, but it's something that really needs to be addressed.
So last year we were noticing intent to sue from Ulster County, and DEC took an enforcement action against us, and we're in discussions now to settle that enforcement action. Right.
Well, we do appreciate, I tell you, the town of Marbletown and the people of High Falls and Rosendale really appreciate the water system. And we'd like to talk to you also about maybe opening, continuing our trails process using the aqueduct right-of-ways, in that too. So, okay. I happen to own a piece of the aqueduct, by the way.
You own the aqueduct? I thought we owned the aqueduct. I mean, that's interesting.
No, they actually sold 1960.
They sold the aqueduct to you?
They sold it. Great. Yeah, it's underneath it. It's 400 feet deep. Okay. There, but I do own a piece of the top of it. Okay. You want to buy some water?
I'll get one in the back, then I'll come back up to the front.
Commissioner, I'd just like to say on behalf of Chairman Eisel, I want to thank you, which you did not bring up, for the fact that you had your crews on the job immediately in Fleischman's, Hartsville, and Margarettsville, and probably Prattsville, right after Hurricane Irene, and the storm we had from the lake. Then on my own, I'm Marty Donnelly from the town of Andes, and on my own, I like to say that dealing with you and your bosses and predecessors have been a breath of fresh air compared to what it used to be like dealing with the DEP. Not everything goes our way, nor should it, but most of the time we're able to come to some kind of an agreement, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm Jan Jaffe. I'm on the board of the Catskill Center, and I was really interested in the frame about jobs that are coming up in the DEP that might have potential for people in our communities. And I was wondering if you could say a little more about how many jobs and whether there's some way of connecting to the local high schools and tracking people who are already in college in science and technology from this area, so that it could be sort of a program to really pull people in.
So I'm not going to be announcing a creation of major new jobs speech today. But in terms of vacancy, we have a certain number of headcount positions. I mean, we have about 860 positions, and I was required. We're going through a 4% budget reduction right now, and the way it looks is I'm really going to be pretty good in terms of the number of vacancies I'm going to have to cut. It looks like I'm not going to have to take as many as I originally thought I was going to have to take. We've had this intern process. We've had interns for the past several years. We're going to continue that. But from time to time, vacancies come up, which we post on our website, and they're scientific vacancies, and they're posted down in this. They're posted on our website, and we get a posting notice. But there's really not a broad distribution out to the communities to make an awareness of these jobs that are available. The most common way that we get employees through the door from the community is by word of mouth from family members to a friend of the family or another family member, and trying to expand how we can get the pool and reach out to others that we're not reaching right now from the watershed to try to get more candidates into positions. So there's not a whole sling of jobs that I've posted right now. It continually comes up. Well, we're going to have a big change over the next 15 years where a big chunk of our staff is going to go away. And right now, there are these vacancies that come up from time to time where it's really key for us, for an agency institutionally, to get some young people to understand the system who can move up through the ranks. And trying to figure out how to do that better is something that we're committed to doing. So I'm done with questions. I've exceeded my time.
Sorry, this was our hope, was to have this dialogue and ask questions, but to stick with the schedule, we're going to end it there. And thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming in and speaking today. And we're going to move on to our next speaker, which Peter will introduce.